So chauffeur, come and take me away, cause I've been standing in this line for like 5 whole days. Me and security ain't getting along. And when I got to the front, they told me all the tickets were gone. So just take me home. The mood is mellow and the roses are and the mims are yellow and the light bulbs on my mirror don't flicker. Everybody gets a nice autograph picture. One for you and one for your sister. Well, I had to work tonight, but is an avid listener. Every song's my favorite song, and mics don't that. All the reviews say you need to go and see that. And everybody claps because everybody is pleased. And then they all take the stage and start performing for me like ha 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 ha. Welcome to RDN. So good to see all of you here. That was me doing a little Lupe fiasco for y'all, but it's good to see all of you here on this Thursday evening for the Sabby and Jaybe show. Welcome. I am one of your hosts, James Fauntleroy. So good to see you. Sabby Sabs, my sister from another mister. Good to see you and happy Thursday.
What's going on, Jaybe? Great to be back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wait, is this your first Sabby's? Oh, yeah, this is the first since you've had your vacation, right?
Yep.
All right. You look so fresh and ready to go. Like somebody just like vacuum sealed you and then put you in the fridge and then you came out. You know.
It's the sun. It's very, very hot today.
Oh, look, I was running errands earlier today. It is hot. But yeah, let's get into this. So if you guys have not already, please make sure to give the video a like. That pushes us out into the algorithm so that we can be able to help encourage as well as inform and inspire as well. If you guys have not already, also, you guys can join our mailing list at revolutionaryblackout.substack.com. This gives you email notifications whenever we go live, upload clips at all. So if you guys have that. And then if you guys have any any inquiries, any stories you would like to submit, or any questions, you guys can email us at revolutionaryblackout@outlook.com. So I just want to say a hello to everybody that's in the chat. Good to see all of you. Thanks in advance for any Rumble rants, any super chats, or any tips on Rockfin. Thank you so very much. We're going to get into our subject today. So what are we talking about today? So we're going to be talking about anti-imperialist Africa, a lesson from Eritrea. This is going to be something I find very interesting, especially about the realms of anti-imperialism. So I'm going to be introducing our guest today. He is the creator and producer of the Horn of African Leftist podcast. He's an independent writer specializing in leftist commentary from the Horn of Africa. And he has been featured on Hood Communist, Black Agenda Report, Shabate.com. And he's also appeared on platforms like Cape Talk, Sputnik, BBC, and Al Jazeera Stream. We have with us today, Filmon Zerai is joining us on the stream, and it's so good to see you, Filmon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, James and Sabrina. I really appreciate it. It's definitely an honor and privilege, especially since it's August 1st, Black August, and definitely an honor and privilege to be here.
Yeah, great. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, and I think a lot of people who aren't familiar with the country of Eritrea, is can you please touch on the anti-colonial history of Eritrea, as well as their successes to provide a foundation to explain what can be done with other nations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, starting off, we have to dispel this myth or this perception that Eritrea gained the word or the term that has been used heavily the last 30 years, this framing around the narrative that Eritrea gained independence from Ethiopia. That is an incorrect historical outlook about the state formation in the Horn of Africa, how Eritrea and Ethiopia were created, an understanding that the struggle of the Eritrean people to be liberated and seek self-determination is an anti-colonial struggle, not versus the Ethiopian people, but this is a struggle against imperialism via the British and later on Washington. So this anti-colonial struggle of the Eritrean liberation movement or the revolution, it is not against the Ethiopian people. It is not Eritrea versus Ethiopia or Eritrea gaining independence from Ethiopia. It liberated itself. That is one narrative that needs to be dispelled, and also to understand that the Eritrean struggle for liberation was not a secessionist movement or a civil war, but an anti-colonial struggle, just like similar to every African struggle that you've heard or read about. So I think that's one of the things that needs to be understood. And I think for your audience, in addition to understanding the perspective of the Eritrea within the Horn of Africa, me myself being as an Eritrean, I'm not coming from the perspective of hyper nationalism or chauvinism trying to center Eritrea, but because Eritrea in the current present state of a neo-colonial order in the Horn of Africa is the only liberated state. And that's something that must be highlighted when I say it's a liberated state, that it functions to be independent, is not under the control, it's not a client state of Washington, and it's not a client state of London. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit of a quick, brief understanding of how it's anti-colonial in the beginning. So
just a question, would you say that Eritrea, because okay, so there's this saying that Eritrea is really, they call it the North Korea of Africa, right?
yes,
Which
yes.
you know, in my view, a country like the DPRK is really done a lot for its people. And so as far as Eritrea is concerned, would you say that it's similar to maybe as far as its achieving of its own sovereignty away from the control of the West? Would you say it's similar to that of maybe China? Well, not necessarily China, but more like Cuba, more like kind of, I guess, kind of DPRK? What would you say if it's more similar to?
Uh, Again, I mean, that's really a great question. The framing around Eritrea being the quote unquote, you know, the African, the North Korea of Africa, and it's racist term, and it's meant to put down aggressively into propaganda against Korea itself and Eritrea. There's nothing wrong to compare Eritrea and the Korean experience, but for the most part, if you type in Eritrea on YouTube, you'll see that Vice heavily focuses on this angle of Eritrea is the North Korea of Africa. And it's meant to vilify its state development, its efforts to put in place an alternative to neoliberalism, put in place self-reliance, which is to turn down IMF, World Bank loans, and U.S. aid. It is the only African state to expel U.S. aid since 2005. No other African state has done that. It is the only African state that is not cooperating with AFRICOM. So I think for the background of this situation with AFRICOM, it started in 2008, but before that, preceding that, it was Libya, Eritrea, Sudan, and Zimbabwe. These are the four states that were initially not cooperating with AFRICOM. And when you saw what happened with Libya, they destroyed Libya. Next to Sudan, it got partitioned. Unfortunately, they targeted the state, even though there's an issue with Bashir regime and the political Islam, the issue with their control and the Muslim Brotherhood. It resisted cooperation with AFRICOM. So Sudan and then Zimbabwe, you saw what happened with Zimbabwe, Mugabe death and the transition to a different path. But mainly Eritrea remains as the only state that has resistance from cooperating from AFRICOM. And there's no active U.S. ambassador and so on. So on many levels, the intensity of the propaganda should tell you that, hey, this state, why are the same people who are denying the genocide in Gaza are the same people telling you that Eritrea is like hell on earth? So you have to understand the enemy over there is the same enemy telling you to view or demonize Eritrea, look at this African state in a way that is negative, that is a way to push you away from understanding its experience and its struggle. It's a progressive state. It makes mistakes, obviously, internally, and there will be challenges. But at the end of the day, it is a progressive state that an African or anybody in the Black diaspora can be proud of. It is a state that is independent. No African state right now, besides the Sahel state right now, are really, truly independent in that they can enact internal development without the permission of Washington, without the permission of London, without the permission of Paris. So you, as an African or anybody in the diaspora, should be proud of this African state. Take pride in that fact that it resisted this imperialist struggle.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to show someone or show everyone where this is on the map. And I have two questions here about the location of Eritrea. So I just want to share my screen really quick here because this is interesting if you guys are not familiar with the location, and I'll make this a little bit larger if I can. Okay, and then let me get there. So Eritrea is right next to Sudan, and it's also, right next to the Red Sea, and across the Red Sea is Yemen. So I guess two questions that I have. Because of its proximity to Sudan, is Eritrea affected by the crisis in Sudan at all? And then also, is Eritrea impacted by what's going on in Yemen, where the Houthis are fighting back against the colonial powers that are sending ships that way?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, to just keep it short, yes, the crisis in Sudan is impacting Eritrea. I mean, there is quite a few Sudanese refugees in the capital of Asmara. There's at full capacity with hotels. So the Eritrean state has received and the Eritrean people have warmly welcomed the Sudanese, because there's a long history of Eritrea and Sudan. During the struggle for liberation, the Sudanese people and the state provided support for the Eritrean refugees and also the Liberation Front. So Sudan is impacted by the crisis. I mean, Sudan is impacted by Washington and London imperialist campaigns via UAE, but the impact hasn't led to where there's security cooperation within the Eritrea and Sudan. Just recently, via the Port Sudan, the Eritrean Navy just engaged with the Sudanese military to counter any Red Sea related security. So that's something I want to definitely emphasize to the audience, that the Red Sea is overly emphasized as being controlled by one entity or entities. It is sovereign to Africa too. And I think that's one key that must be particularly understood, that this is African water too, as it is on the other side. Regarding Yemen, there's a long history with Yemen. In the beginning of the 90s, there was efforts to cause tension between Eritrea and Yemen. There was a territorial dispute that was created by Washington, London, and Paris to cause tension and fight. And there was a brief fight in 1995 with the Hanish Islands, in which Eritrea and Yemen were fighting each other for about a week or so. From that, we went to a international border decision where the territory was handed to Yemen, and Eritrea conceded because it respected the decision and is not trying to fight and to fall into the bait of war with Yemen. So that is the history in the 90s. During the 2000s, there was efforts by the Yemeni leader at that time, who was, as you can see, he was assassinated a few years ago by the Houthis for betraying them. He was involved with the TPLF regime in Ethiopia and also in Sudan, the Bashir regime, who were hostile to Eritrea during the 2000 era. This was called Axis of Sana. So this was three-way countries to isolate Eritrea, be aligned with Washington aggression to isolate Eritrea during the early 2000s. And the background to this is, in 1998, the regime in Ethiopia via TPLF invaded 25% of the territory, 25% of Eritrea, attempted to capture the capital, and it fell. From 1998 to 2000, the Eritrean state survived from state collapse, war, and this was a Washington-led improved war that was attempting to commit an attack on the Eritrean state for resisting a neoliberal attempt program and different approach, for not cooperating regionally, for not sending troops when it is asked to send troops regionally. So this led to war that was triggered in 1998 by the TPLF regime of Mullah Zenawi. And this is linked to the aggression from Yemen, because Yemen was it was a client state of Washington and London and Paris. So all three entities and states that were, under the control or influence of imperialism were trying to antagonize or isolate or demonize the Eritrean state. So from this perspective, engagement with Eritrea and Yemen is a long history, is ancient. So after the development of the Houthis, there was different engagement with the Houthis as well. It became a little complicated later with the Saudi involvement and the UAE involvement, which Eritrea did not get involved with the war itself, but for other reason, the Eritrean state did engage UAE because it faced a different military contradiction from or threats coming from the TPLF regime in Ethiopia. So it had to pursue a pragmatic engagement with UAE because it was under sanction. So because we had a limited option to import weapons and various repairs, engaged UAE. So it did not take any side on the war in Yemen, but it had to engage UAE. So from that perspective, this is the history, and there's a lot more to it. But right now, Eritrea is engaging the Iranian government. So therefore, we're in a situation where the Eritrean state is engaging the resistance axis indirectly or directly.
Great. So there's a good question. Before I get into some of the things that impressed me about Eritrea, this was actually a great question from Roger Meadows. He says, please educate us on what AFRICOM is. If you can just give us just like a 30-second snippet of what AFRICOM is.
Yeah, sure. AFRICOM, we originally just started in 2008. Keep in mind, Washington was not heavily, didn't have that much of a military presence in Africa. So before 2008, there was no such thing as Al-Shabaab. There was no such thing as Boko Haram or these elements that we see active in Africa. There was no history of terrorism or suicide bombing to that level that we're seeing, or ISIS, or all these elephants in the room in Africa. And this started happening when the AFRICOM was formed after 2008, under this vision of providing security in cooperation with different states, whether it's fighting terrorism under the guise of fighting terrorism. This came after the Bush administration. So they use this idea of fighting terrorism to push out an imperialist plundering of Africa, which is to make it safe for multinational corporation to make sure that African client states are implementing resource extraction to their favor, to neutralize competition, which is China. That's what's happening right now. And African state like Eritrea, to resist this is to resist imperialism, is to resist militarization of Africa. That's the key thing about Africa. It is military is normalizing this whole idea that Africa needs to be, it's a child that needs to be watched by a power. It is humiliating to the African people. It is humiliating to the African continent that we have this thing in our soil, that the thing that exists that manages and monitors our soil. So AFRICOM is an extension of imperialism. It is meant to control African states, and also to contain and counter Beijing, Moscow. So under the guise of fighting terrorism or pursuing democracy or nation building. So they will give you all type of propaganda angle to, pretty much normalize this occupation of Africa.
I was just going to say real quick, Jaybe, it kind of reminds me of CARICOM, because I remember Kamala Harris went to speak to CARICOM about U.S. Engagement, or as they refer to it, but it kind of sounds similar to that a little bit.
Yeah, it sounds to me like, in a nutshell, it's really just a Western hegemonic babysitter that it infantilizes Africa. But those of us who are part of the diaspora, we know that the Western powers, they tend to infantilize us all the time when it's convenient, and then they see us as these big, powerful forces of nature when it's also convenient for them, so that they can actually take us down. So thank you very much for that explanation. One of the things I want to share here, and I saw this and I was just thoroughly impressed. So this is from Breakthrough News. They say, why is Eritrea demonized by the West? This is just some of the list of things that Eritrea has accomplished that I found deeply impressive.
You're going to say someone is the worst of the worst. And that's why I raised up that issue of North Korea. Some would say DPRK, compared it to Cuba, compared it to Venezuela, because there's a similar issue here where the countries are listed as the worst of the worst and all these different things. And then when you actually start to look at the numbers, they in fact are not the worst of the worst. So just throwing some things out here for you that I think people would be relevant. And again, sorry for looking at my notes, but again, I want to get it right about Eritrea here. Eritrea has a higher literacy rate than Pakistan, Nigeria, Egypt, Mali, Niger, and Sudan. They have a higher life expectancy than Nigeria, South Africa, Angola, Zambia, Malawi, and Mozambique. Now, I want to just reiterate some of what I just said. In the first two, that they have a higher literacy rate than Nigeria, that they have a higher life expectancy than Nigeria. Nigeria is one of the richest nations on the planet Earth. There's no reason why people are living in abject poverty all across that country. And that right there should tell you something, because Nigeria is one of America's best friends on the African continent and has been for some time. And their social indicators are shameful. Their use of resources, the income inequality, the looting, the kleptocracy, shameful conditions for people of Nigeria. Lower life expectancy than Eritrea, lower literacy rate, and you never hear anything that's said about Eritrea said about Nigeria. And that's not a huge knock on other African countries, but I think it's important. Also, Pakistan, Pakistan obviously has many development issues, but lower literacy rate than Eritrea, lower life expectancy than Eritrea. When you look at access to improved drinking water, this is a big issue in Eritrea. It's one of the main things that they're working on is access to water, access to more sanitation facilities. I think it's something like 54% of villages now or communities are open defecation free, which is a big thing that was celebrated this year by some of the UN agencies that Eritrea had accomplished. And that's a big thing. So improved drinking water, that's a huge issue. That's something that they're focusing on. So more people in Eritrea have access to improved drinking water. Safely managed water. This is a different one. Similar sort of stat, but more people in Eritrea have access to safely managed water, so clean water, than Nigeria, Pakistan, Congo, Brazzaville, and Peru. So again, there you go. Yet again, you look at the issue of infant mortality. There's a lower infant mortality in Eritrea than in Nigeria, India, Pakistan, Mali, Zambia, Benin, Burkina Faso, Sudan, Uganda, and Chad. And there is a higher employment to population ratio, which is basically the number of people who are of working age that are actually working rather than just sitting around idle and unemployed, than Nigeria, South Africa, Pakistan, El Salvador, and Colombia. So
I just want to say I was very shocked to hear that. In particular, with Nigeria, because and please let us know, Filmon, but when it comes to Eritrea, do you? I know you go back and forth from the U.S. to Eritrea. Is it particularly common for Eritreans to immigrate to the U.S.? And I asked that question because when he mentioned Nigeria, I'm like, we're very familiar. I'm sure you know this, but in the United States, we are very familiar with Nigeria. And I've met a lot of Nigerians here in the U.S., particularly I'm in the Boston area, so it's considered a hub here. So I've met a lot, but you're the first person I've met from Eritrea, but I'm shocked to hear him say about the literacy rate, because we've always been told, and Jaybe, maybe you can back me on this, but we've always been told that Nigeria was kind of like the top of the top, like the tippity top, when it comes to education in Africa. So I was kind of surprised to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, just a bit of background on why we have these progressive, the stats that was mentioned by Eugene, which, shout out to the Breakthrough News, who have done a great coverage of Eritrea. I have made some criticism about their coverage of Ethiopia, but that's fine. Those are, Eugene is a brother, I respect him. So starting from that, the background to how did this Eritrean state make this progress on a social indicator, social justice, is an extension of the Eritrean revolution. So earlier we mentioned that the struggle for liberation is anti-colonial. The Eritrean revolution, it was twofold. There was the armed struggle and also the revolution. Two things were happening inside Eritrea on the ground the last 60 years. The Eritrean revolution, led by ELM, ELF, EPLF, was anti-feudal, meaning it would do away with the ignorance of feudalism, the society on these reactionary based social conservative or elements that are exploiting the people, landowners, and then led to providing literacy campaigns for the Eritrean masses. Education was key, how to win over the peasant base. And this was the key and success of the Eritrean Revolution. That was the guarantee and extension of the Eritrean Revolution. Just like the Cuban Revolution, it was focused on the royal area, and education was an important thing. In addition to healthcare, one fact that is something that people, maybe your audience is not familiar. During the 30 Years' War, the EPLF had a central base in Sahel region. Is inside Eritrea. We call it the Sahel Mountains. And I think we're going to speak on the Sahel Alliance later. But for the most part, the Sahel Mountain had an underground hospital. It is the largest. It's in the Guinness World Record. It's one of those unique facts. EPLF led a underground hospital that was, transporting, doing surgery while there was bombing by the pseudo-Marxist dark regime of from Ethiopia. So EPLF was really heavily focused on education, social justice, doing away the backwardness. So the Eritrean state under the PFDJ, while it made a lot of mistakes in other areas, has done a good job in this social indicator of education and healthcare. That's something that cannot be taken away from the achievement of the state itself. But regarding the comparison to other states, with love and respect to all the Africans, nations from Nigeria, Ghana. When I say that they are a client state, it is not to disrespect our brothers who are from that country. When I say these entities, Ghana and Nigeria, even South Sudan, who I love and have respect for my South Sudanese brothers, you are mine. Like you, Eritrea is yours. These are client states, and they are under the dictate of IMF and World Bank, and their program internal development is in charge. So you have these they're promoted as a place of democracy. You look at Ghana. Ghana is an example of this place that is symbolically where Obama's visit and the Hillary Clinton visit, and they symbolically give this impression that Ghana is the world leading, Africa leading in democracy and so on. So, but it concedes its sovereignty to the IMF. It concedes its sovereignty to World Bank. Eritrea has not done that. That's why this is a state that is heavily demonized, because this development that's happening within the Eritrean state, yeah, there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of issue of just like Cuba has a lot of challenges as far as not having electricity power because of sanctions, not having the ability to provide different access, local access. Eritrea faces that. But despite all this pressure, imperialist pressure by Washington, by London, imperialism, the Eritrean state has provided a service to the people. Yes, there's mistakes. There is a lot of challenges internally, and I'm not going to give an impression that this is heaven on earth for the Eritrean people. They have suffered a lot because of the sanctions and imperialism, but there's progress at the same time. There is a lot of challenges under the PFDJ. There has been a lot of mistakes executed by the President Isaias Afwerki, who have made public criticism about the mistakes and challenges and where we need to go off in our revolutionary paths. So at the same time, this comparison to the client states like Nigeria and Ghana is important because it tells you that an independent state, a sovereign state of Eritrea, who's truly liberated, that nobody can dictate. There is no U.S. aid to tell it, hey, you must do this at 5 p.m. This is your development program. No, I think Isaias Afwerki and the EPLF and the PFDJ have done a great job to reject the dictate of imperialism in this act of trying to determine your developmental path. So it is not a disrespect to the Nigeria or Ghana or Sudan or South Sudan when they are a client state, and you see these metrics that are horrible because these are entities, neo-colonial government that are put in power to implement, the needs of Washington and London, not its people. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Or do you want to go ahead, JB? I have
Well, just a little pop culture reference. I'm not sure if you know, but the late rapper Pop Smoke was Eritrean.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was Eritrean. So just to let you know. Yeah.
Interesting.
But go ahead. What you were going to say, Sabs. Sorry.
I want to ask you about resources because I don't know if you guys follow this account, but if you're not, please follow this account on X. It's called African Stream. And I just found out about this account the other day, actually, but they have been really doing the damn thing. I just want to make sure I pull up the right thing here. So African Stream, that's the name of the account on X. And they posted this video, which is kind of making the rounds and is talking about the failures of Western imposed economic policies in Africa. Makes sense once you realize it's intentional sabotage. This clip here, it says, have a listen to Dr. Nicholas' remarks and let us know what you think. I want you guys to hear this because I think this is very telling. And there's captions for this as well, just FYI.
There's no sound.
Oh, you can't hear anything?
No.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. Sorry, let me try to share this again. I think I forgot to press
Yeah, it's okay.
share sound. Sorry about that. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, there we go.
Sub-Saharan Africa has been fundamental to the global prosperity of the advanced countries. Okay, and Africa had a role to play. It has a role as a raw material producer. We will not allow Sub-Saharan Africa to escape that. Okay, we do everything to keep Sub-Saharan Africa where it is, also impoverished. It's absolutely vital for the prosperity of everyone else. So let's get clear about that. Okay, and this means all the economic structures, all the global institutions, and the economics we teach everyone is all designed to keep Africa exactly where it is. And whether it is Europe or US or now China, it's always the same. We need Africa to be impoverished because we need those raw materials and we need them dirt cheap.
So shout out there to African Stream for sharing that on X. I wanted to get your take about that, Filmon, because this idea that the West needs to keep Africa where it's at because they need the raw materials.
Yeah, that's a great video. Africa Stream is a great friend. They're doing great work over there. Shout out to them. So first of all, the video itself is excellent. It lays out the great foundation. It's a great point. I just want to reiterate a different point. The term Sub-Saharan Africa is properly used in the diaspora. Even I say it sometimes, but it's incorrect and it's really a racist term. Yeah, you can Google this and just say why is that an issue? But we have to move away from using that term itself. But starting from giving the context and what reacting to the video itself, just something that's relevant to the development in Ethiopia. I mean, just recently, the Abiy administration just accepted IMF World Bank loans as a concession to, Washington gave it this carrot and stick the last few years due to the war in 2020 in order for the Abiy administration to, concede on certain things with the TPLF and different views. Originally, Washington decided to provide these IMF and World Bank loan, and it has a lot of constraints. And we're about to see this cycle happening with Ethiopia. Unfortunately, it's going to go through an economic crisis, unfortunately. And we've seen this everywhere. We've seen it in Ghana. We're seeing it in Kenya. Kenya is a key place for London initially as a former British colony, but also Washington. You've seen it with the rollout of the IMF bank and the protest, anti-IMF protest in Kenya, which is very historic, that every African should be proud of and should use that energy and that rage and say, hey, this is happening to my country as well. They're have kept my country in debt. I cannot develop. I don't have your country ability to provide you resources is limited because of these constraints. But yeah, the video itself is clear, and it's a basic point, and that is imperialism. Imperialism is IMF. Imperialism is World Bank. Imperialism is, in addition to these economic instruments, imperialism can come in the function of, hey, Amnesty International or human rights. These are tacticals of imperialism that comes in the form of, hey, human rights conclusions about what is human rights, and that's imperialism. So we must definitely stay away and be critical of human rights and amnesty as an extension of imperialism. It can impoverish Africa through, collectively punishing the people. That's what's happening with Eritrea. Like, while there is a lot of progress, it has Washington and London have collectively punished the people for resisting and providing support for the state itself. Just for example, in 2020, Eritrea, for the first time after 20 years of being in a defensive posture, responded to the attacks of the TPLF, which was supported by Washington. The TPLF was inside Ethiopia for 28 years in power. It was put in power by Washington and Langley. For 30 years, Eritrea had to basically fight off and resist and defend itself against a military aggression from Washington support. And 2020 was very historic that Eritrea finally defended itself and went inside Tigray, and for the first time successfully defended and neutralized because the TPLF sent rockets inside Eritrea. So you have these accusations that Eritrea is committing all type of genocide. The same people that are telling you there's no genocide in Gaza are telling you there's genocide committed by the Eritrean people or the Eritrean Defense Forces. So we have to be careful about how imperialism functions from the economic level, the propaganda level, and using human rights. So I mean, hopefully that answers your question. Yeah.
Great. Excuse me. One of my questions that I have, and I kind of want to juxtapose this with the Sahel states. So, from a stratospheric level, can you give us the juxtaposition of how the Sahel states are becoming more similar to Eritrea and rejecting neocolonialism? And what expectations do you have for Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the timing of the rise of the Sahel states, and it comes at a time where we're seeing the decline of empire, which is the London, Paris, and Washington. They're all in a state of decline internally, seeing the domestic issues and economic decline. So the rise and the formation of AES is timely, given the rise of resistance to French imperialism, West Africa, which is timely. People have to also remember that Djibouti is a former French colony, which is in the Horn of Africa. It itself could be impacted at some point as well. The connection to Eritrea and how the experience of Eritrea and Sahel are similar. Eritrea doesn't have any military base that is controlled by Washington or London or Paris. That's one. Eritrea does not engage with IMF or World Bank. That's two. And then it has expelled USA, like I mentioned earlier. So these are the steps that AES is doing and is implementing. And Eritrea and the Sahel states, there has been different level of engagement at the Russia summit. The Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki was at Moscow, and the leadership of the AES were there. There was different engagement at that point, and also there was high level engagement at the United Nations and various efforts. So here and there is diplomatic contact with these various states. And at some point, there will be more contacts. And keep in mind, Chad, the country Chad, is somewhat close to the Horn of Africa, is next to Sudan. Chad, by extension, is part of that Sahel resistance. It's going through an internal change, but by extension, the Sahel state and its momentum against the French imperialism will go bleeding into Chad. Eritrea and Chad have this long history of engaging each other. So hopefully we'll see a continuation of Chad, and that will infect Chad, and then it will infect Sudan. And then, so the history of Sahel, the term Sahel is very prevalent with the Eritrean history and folklore about the revolution. Like I mentioned, the EPLF, one of the vanguard of the revolution, was based in the Sahel Mountains. The Sahel Mountain is very symbolic, and that's where the underground hospital was formed. That's where the main of the revolutionary objective and success was implemented in education and so forth. So there's a lot of commonalities and engagement there that both Eritrea and the Sahel states can engage each other. They have common relationship with Moscow and Beijing, and also Turkey as well. So from this perspective, there is a lot to gain for just not Eritrea, but the Horn of Africa. Eritrea is leading the effort to provide security cooperation for Somalia. It's training over 5,000 troops. It is helping Sudan with the Red Sea security. So from this perspective, Eritrea can provide support and transfer experience. So the Sahel states can also provide experience on their current development and struggles. It's a win-win for Africa. It's a win-win for the Horn of Africa. It's a win-win for the Sahel states. But yeah. One thing that to learn for the Sahel states have to learn is that the Washington, London, and Paris will look at the situation in your contradiction. So right now, all these states are moving forward with the federation, but they might use a neighboring state to create a border crisis and trap them into war. That's what they did with Eritrea and Ethiopia. That's what they're doing with Venezuela and Guyana. They use the pretext of border conflict, a border crisis to make sure there's conflict and chaos. That's how they manage tension. So they will look at a contradiction. If a neighboring state with Mali, Burkina Faso, they will use them to attack That's one way they will come at you. Second way is they will attack your diaspora. If there is a support base that is supportive of all these states and federation, they will come and demonize your diaspora. They will try to divide you. They will try to, and then the third is the media effort. They would call the AES a dictatorship, a junta, undemocratic, and also use this issue of marginalized community, which I'm sympathetic to, but the latest development was the banning of homosexuality, which is that was the decision that was made. I think it's still in the rough draft, but we see how empire uses the marginalized community to divide Africa. We've seen in Uganda, the regime over there is very aggressive and anti-marginalized community. And then you have other states who are very, they over-center this issue to where both entity with the overly liberal elements are, and then the very conservative elements are an instrument of imperialism to cause harm and division, where this issue can be settled in a way that is not going to bring imperialism attention against the AES, and then they probably will do that the same with Eritrea as well. So that's a lesson. And then they will come at you in different ways. Like I mentioned, the border issue, the economic war, and diplomatic war, and media war. So hopefully AES is ready. This is the beginning. There will be more attacks coming for it.
Yeah. That reminds me of how colonialists they utilized the resentment between tribes. They propped up one tribe over another, and they caused resentment between them. So then they cause a division. Whereas they're both victims of these Western imperialist powers. So it just reminds me of it's really the same song, but just a different dance that they've been doing. One of my next questions also is you wanted to discuss how Ethiopia is viewed by the Black left versus Israel. And can you expand on that? And we can get into also the issue of Pan-Africanism being sanitized online.
That's a great question. I mean, it's timely. The events of October 2023 in Gaza woke up a lot of people about how they view Israel, how they view Palestine. And Israel, and I'm speaking particularly within the African and Black diaspora who are from a Christian evangelist point of view, who are stuck on the term Israel, right? You cannot talk to them. You can never tell them like they're committing genocide, because they already stuck in that mythology of what Israel is. It's a religious thing and it's an identity thing. You can never discourage them from not supporting that or having a critical lens. Hey, there's a genocide happening. That's what's happening. And then also the perception of Ethiopia historically. Let's start from the beginning. I think Ethiopia, the term Ethiopia, it can be very confusion. It can cause a lot of confusion because the term ancient before the creation of before 1890, when the Italian or British colonialism entered the Horn of Africa, there was no such thing as Ethiopia or Eritrea. These are modern nation states that were created by colonialism. So we get in this idea and mythology of Ethiopia has existed for 3,000 years. It is a Solomonic bloodline. It is not African. It is connected to King Solomon. It is from the Semitic people who are not African. They came from the Yemen. This mythology, it is brainwashing, and it is self-hatred, and it is an extension of Abyssinian fundamentalism. The same way that the elements in the client state in Israel, they have this mythology of being there for 1,000 years, and this nation state is ours, and so on. So there's an issue. It is a challenge that the Black left or the Pan-African camp, they still have this weakness about how they perceive Ethiopia, because they're still stuck on this Marcus Garvey in this era of the old era of how they should view Abyssinia through the mythology of the Battle of Ottawa, the mythology of Ethiopia as the term and its geopolitical term that is ancient. They're not able to understand that what Ethiopia is after 1890 is not the same as what the term Ethiopia is previously, before 1890, which is anything below any entity below Egypt was called Ethiopia, and the whole continent was called Ethiopia. So the term itself has been used, and I understand. I'm sympathetic to the Black nationalism. Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X and Kwame Ture, they, by extension, Black nationalism, when it looks to Africa, it is there to redeem this identity, to say we're come from Africa. And it came at a time with the rise of black nationalism. So you have people like Marcus Garvey looking at the events in Battle of Ottawa, thinking that this is a defeat and resistance against colonialism by Africans, when it was actually proxy war between the French and the British. The British were supporting the Italians, and the French were supporting the Melik. And Melik was a slave-owning feudal monarchy that has subjugated other nationalities, conquered other nationalities, enslaved them. So that's what the foundation of Ethiopia has to be understood, and how it was formed is the same way that Israel is formed in 1948 through the support of the British colonialism for their own objective, for their own interests. So there is a lot of unlearning that is needed within the Black left, within the Pan-African camp about Ethiopia. So this is not against Ethiopian people, because there are those Eritreans, Ethiopian, and Somalis. We are one, and we are African, and the Horn of Africa is one. But it is not to be hostile to Ethiopia or promote this hatred of Ethiopia itself. But in order for us to move forward as united, and the Black diaspora to support the region and unity, and for the Horn of Africa region to have commonality and trust for the Black diaspora, this mythology of Abyssinia, Haile Selassie, Ethiopia is 3,000 years old, Queen Sheba, and all the first Christian kingdom, that has to be discarded, because it is based on mythology that is meant to subjugate other nationality. It is meant to promotion of dominance. It is meant to conceal the role of the British and the French colonialism in the Horn of Africa. So from this perspective, Black left and Pan-Africanists, they have to be scientific in mind. You're able to analyze deep history of Israel, deep history of how it was formed, but for some reason, this same assessment is not applied to Ethiopia, and it leads people to not understanding the region itself, how this thing called Ethiopia was formed. So that's my issue, and I just want to represent that conversation.
I was gonna ask as well in reference to Israel, how do people in Eritrea feel since October 7th? Is there concern that, because given its proximity to the Middle East, is there some type of fear or concern that Israel's expansion could make its way to Africa? There have been a number of statements I've heard Netanyahu make himself in different events and in conference meetings, where he said, and then we will go into Africa and liberate Africa. So I'm just curious, is there any concern from people in Eritrea that this could somehow make way into the Horn of Africa?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's something that people don't realize, that the role of Israel in the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea, it's a main player that people overly forget. It is active. It's a main player that is active in the Red Sea and also Ethiopia. Under the TPLF regime, under Meles Zenawi, Israel became an observer of African Union thanks to the TPLF regime. In addition to that, it is to be remembered that in 2009, Israel bombed Sudan, and this is an allegation that the Israel government or Washington was making, that Eritrea and Sudan were helping the Hamas entities and also supporting Iran to support the Palestinian struggle. So there is a lot of connection there. There's impact because of the Red Sea and how it will become a center of crisis, global crisis, in the coming few months and next, because of what's happening right now. The Red Sea is impacting the security of the region because of the resistance in Yemen efforts. In addition to that, we have to keep in mind that there are Eritreans inside Israel, and there are Ethiopians or Sudanese inside Israel. And the history behind that is Israel intentionally started giving out visa and this is a plan by the British and Washington to depopulate Eritrea and Ethiopia, to lower the Eritrean migrants to leave Eritrea and then go through Sinai and enter Israel to become cheap labor, to be exploited, and so on, because Israel has a neoliberal economic model and they need cheap labor, and it's ongoing. So that's a different issue. And the Eritrean people inside are impacted because Africans, Ethiopians, there are a lot of them inside Israel that are going to be impacted by this contradiction of the ongoing genocide and the resistance efforts. So we have to keep in mind that Africans do exist in Israel, and it's unfortunate they arrived there because of imperialism, how Eritrea was targeted, and Israel intentionally and Washington intentionally lured people looking for employment and to leave their country to go to Israel. So, like I mentioned, Eritrea is also engaged with the resistant access. Just a few days ago, the Eritrean foreign minister is engaged with the Iranian government, which is a key member of the resistant access. In addition to that, the Eritrean state is engaged with the Syrian state, which is a long history of supporting the Eritrean revolution. In addition to that, the Eritrean People Liberation Front and the ELF were engaged with the PLO initially during the 70s and 80s before they switched sides to the pseudo-Marxist regime. So that's a different history. But yeah, the Palestinian struggle and what's the development inside Israel is going to impact the Horn of Africa. There's Ethiopians there, there's Sudanese there, there's Eritreans there, and it's going to impact the region itself because the Red Sea will be on fire and the resistant access. They have to do what they need to do as far as providing resistance. And
That was
yeah.
Yeah, I was going to add too, and there was that report from The Guardian a couple of years ago that Israel was sterilizing Ethiopian women against their will, that they didn't tell those women the medicine what they were actually giving them. So it also kind of seems like Israel at the same time, at least in the past couple of years, they were trying to prevent Ethiopian women from reproducing.
That's true, and that's this mythology of Israel and Ethiopia goes a long way. And you mentioned the Ethiopian Jews who are tokenized by the Israel government or the regime to use in media efforts to say, hey, we are progressive or democratic. But the Ethiopian population, even the Eritrean population, are heavily discriminated. They're targeted and they face a lot of racist injustice. And I just mentioned is one factor. And it dispels this myth of the Abyssinians inside Ethiopia or in the diaspora who believe they are closer to Israel. No, they don't. They look at you as a black person. You are inferior. You're not closer to them because you believe you have some Semitic King Solomon. They tell you in your face they don't like you, but you still believe in this mythology that you are closer to the people of King Solomon. These people in Israel have a deep hatred of the Africans that live there from Ethiopia and Eritrea.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I just want to correct myself. It was not Pop Smoke that's Eritrean. It was Nipsey Hussle.
Yeah. I was going to mention that. Yeah.
So Nipsey Hussle?
Sorry.
Nipsey Hussle?
Nipsey Hussle.
Yeah. His father is actually there's a famous picture of his father. He was one of the student activists during the 70s and 80s that were engaging with the Black Panther and Kwame Ture to support the Eritrean Revolution and the Eritrean cause. So Nipsey Hussle, by his father, is connected to the Eritrean Revolution and the PLF, and Nipsey Hussle has visited Eritrea, and there's a background to this. It's a long history, so I'm glad you mentioned Nipsey Hussle.
Yeah. So my apologies to everybody. It was not Pop Smoke. It was Nipsey Hussle. I got the names switched. I'm sorry. I saw his face in my head, and I'm just like, I'm sorry. But yeah, they both have braids. So sue me. But one of my final question actually that I wanted to ask you about is I just want to shift gears just a little bit. Now, as we've seen in the last couple of months, Kenyans, which Kenya is not too far from Eritrea and Ethiopia, Kenyans have been rejecting the tax proposal by William Ruto. So with that backdrop, he seems to have a subordinate role in subduing, countries like Haiti on behalf of the West, namely Western states like the United States, Canada, and France. And so what are your thoughts on this, and how can the Kenyan people be supported by those of us who are in the West?
Yeah, that's definitely timely. There's a bit of background on how Ruto and Eritrea are connected. So if anybody's aware, I think it was a few years ago, around 2014 or 2015, prior to that, Kenya and the leadership were involved in this ICC crimes against humanity that the ICC was targeting the Kenyan state to. It was close to a state collapse, and it was going to cause tribal war. And Ruto was one of the leaders that was going to be, put on trial. So Eritrea resisted, put itself out there and resisted the ICC, and it did the same thing in South Sudan with the Bashir regime, not to support these administration, but on the fact that no African should be targeted to that level, because if they get them, they're going to get all of us. Like, at the end of the day, the ICC is an instrument of imperialism. I know there's position about people viewing it as an extension of what they're saying publicly about Gaza, and it's an instrument of imperialism. I don't take it seriously. But Ruto was caught up, and Eritrea resisted efforts, and Ruto always view Eritrea positively, and that's why there has been high-level engagement. Prior to him, there has been hostile, very lukewarm diplomatic engagement between Kenya and Eritrea, because Kenya was going along with Washington imperialist effort to isolate Eritrea. So Ruto came along and engaged Eritrea. There's an embassy opening and so forth. So from that point of view, it is positive that Ruto came in from the Eritrean diplomatic effort. On the second half, Haiti is an issue that, as a symbol of the actual symbol of Black resistance, not Abyssinia, not Ethiopia, it is actually a state, a history, a rich history that is I'm proud of as an African, as a Black person. That is Haiti there, and the fact that Ruto, as somebody who's African, is trying to implement a military occupation on behalf of Washington, is a travesty, and it's an insult to Pan-African vision and unity. In addition to that, the anti-IMF Gen Z-led protest is very inspirational, and I feel like this will bleed into other neo-colonial entities. Nigeria, I think that's what's happening now, and we're going to see those protests because these main states of Kenya, South Africa, Zambia, and Southern region, and West Africa, they have higher internet speeds, so they're able to share it to the world. Compared to Eritrea, which is impacted by sanction and different reasons and limited. So we'll see more of these coming, and it's very hopeful. It's very aspirational. It is not focusing on democracy, human rights. It's more focusing on imperialism, the things that are choking the Kenyan people in their life. And I'm happy to see this, and it's very, very, very good news for the Horn of Africa, the East Africa, and Africa itself, for the Kenyan youth to come out there and focus on the IMF, and hopefully they'll continue to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so very much for that. Also, just a little bit of a side note. A lot of people don't know this. I'm actually a third Nigerian, so.
Nice.
Oh my God. He took that test. He took that test.
So yeah. If I look a little West African to you, you know why. So.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So just as a question to you, like, where can people find you? What do you have coming up next? How can people see more of you?
So yeah, thanks for asking. Right now, I mostly use the Horn of Africa Leftist podcast account to just put out commentary and persuasion from a left or progressive Pan-African revolutionary Black left inspired effort. The Horn of Africa Leftist podcast. You can find it on Spotify, and I am in the process of recording more episodes, hopefully in the coming few months or so. So that's the Twitter. I'm on Twitter and mostly just on any podcast platform.
All right. Thank you so very much for coming on. It was actually a really educational session for people like me. You know, I felt like I was sitting in the magic circle, crisscross applesauce, learning about, what's going on in the Horn of Africa. And then also the anti-imperialist roots, which kind of makes me proud, of my African heritage. And it goes, you know what? We can do the same thing here. So I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks once again. This is August 1st, and it's any Black space or Black left media that can, have an opening. I'm always there, and thanks for the invitation. And yeah, looking forward to Black August, and this is a great month to focus on Black radicalism.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. We'll see you in the interwebs.
Bye.
All right, Sabs. Did you learn a lot? Because I learned a lot.
Yeah, man, that was like base. And the other thing too is I do feel like when it comes to Africa, we've mainly had guests on to talk about Ethiopia. I know a couple people have been on to talk about Ethiopia, South Africa, Sudan, and Congo.
Yeah. And that's something I think that I would like to cover more African countries to learn about the history, because a lot of times there's always an attempt to push out imperialism, like what we see in the Sahel states, like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. And the thing is that a lot of times I want us to study these, because a lot of us on the left will study things like, you know, the Bolivarian Revolution, right? What's going on in places like Bolivia and Venezuela. Then we'll start to learn more about what happened in Cuba. We learn more about, you know, the Bolshevik Revolution. We'll learn about the Chinese Revolution, Vietnamese. And so we learn about these, but, you know, when it comes to a lot of the African countries, we don't get that information or that education as much. And I think that it's really our duty as a Black network to really push these things forward, to be like, look, have you looked into Kwame Nkrumah? Have you looked into Thomas Sankara? Have you looked into these different people who actually, have you looked into Muammar Gaddafi? Have you looked into these people who are also just as revolutionary, if not more revolutionary, in their own right within the whole of Africa? And so I think it's really important that we also focus on them to see what they've done wrong and what they've done right, and see how we can implement some of those things here in the United States as well to change our system too.
I agree. I think a lot of times we end up focusing on the countries that are put before us by the Western media, right? Like some of the countries you mentioned, they're always they're always in the media, especially Venezuela. Like it's always there, but we're not taught a lot about countries in Africa besides Nigeria. Like it's always, you know. So it's
damn you, Nigeria.
Yeah, like it seems like it's the countries that they want to teach us, they want us to know about, and instead of the ones that. And Africa is a huge continent. It's huger than it appears on some maps, by the way. And this is something a teacher told me when I was in middle school. She said that Africa was intentionally, made to look smaller than it actually is, to show some type of inferiority towards Europe. Yeah. If you look at a lot of maps, like back in the day, like they make Europe appear to be larger than it actually is, and they make Africa appear to be smaller.
Yeah. And the crazy part is Africa is massive. There's a reason why it is the second largest continent on Earth.
Yep.
You know, because a lot of people will go, well, you know, and it's like we're always diminished in some way, shape, or form. All of us throughout the diaspora, we're always diminished as a people. And like, for instance, you have to hand it to the Sahel states for kicking out France.
Right.
They kicked out France, of all places, of all empires. The French Empire was formidable in its day. And the fact that they were able to do that, right? And so I think it's important for us to start promoting more of what the achievements of Africa is, especially from an anti-imperialist and anti-colonial perspective, because who else is going to do it?
Another thing too, I don't know if everyone realizes this, but I have seen more videos of American expats. And Jaybe, I told you about this. I love watching these American expats videos, but I've been watching those videos, and that more Americans have moved to countries in Africa. I interviewed a guy, very first year of doing YouTube. I interviewed a guy who was from Cleveland, Ohio, and he moved to South Africa. And I also think he lived somewhere else in Africa before as well. And he was just telling me that like a lot of Americans just don't understand. They have a big misconception about, you know, what life is like there. And he loved it. Like he loved like his time there and everything like that. He came back because his family's here, but things are changing. I do explore a little bit more, and they're not tied to the United States. They're willing to go live somewhere else.
Yeah, definitely. Zoya came in. She said Western maps that make Africa look about 30% smaller than its actual size.
Yep.
Man,
and
it is
like crazy. I said, like one of my teachers in middle school taught us that in history class.
Yeah. And that's something that I think that a lot of people. I want to get one of those corrected maps so I can put it back there so I can have it.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be kind of small because it's kind of far, but I want to get one of those corrected maps because I really want to have that there. But one of the things is I definitely want to thank Filmon for coming on because voices like that are desperately needed. And he was telling me before you came on, Sabby, that he's also worked with the Black Agenda Reports. So Auntie Margaret,
Right.
we love us some Auntie Margaret. So
yeah,
great.
if you're not following Black Agenda Report, you guys, you're really missing out because they have a lot of, a Black Agenda Report isn't just Margaret Kimberly and Jean. Right. It's not just them. Like there are they have contributors and they also have, like permanent writers of Black Agenda Report. And there are certain journalists that cover certain parts of the, Pan-African, there are certain, like, for example, Ann Garrison, I believe, covers the Horn of Africa, which someone just discussed with us. But they have journalists that contribute to Black Agenda Report that cover certain countries and certain regions. Like there's certain ones that focus on Haiti, for example. But yeah, definitely follow Black Agenda Report.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I'm actually reading Margaret Kimberly's book on my channel. So if you guys want to listen to me read and discuss Margaret Kimberly's book, you guys should tune into my channel. But I want to go to the chat really quick. But before we do that, just wanted to give a shout out to patrons, just to thank you guys for being who you are and making sure that we actually are able to do this work. You guys make it happen. And you guys, we try to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. For instance, this Sunday, me and the RBN Orlando chapter will be on the ground doing work for our community, giving out toiletry care packages to the unhoused neighbors. And 2 weeks from this Sunday, I think it is, Subs, you'll be out doing the damn thing for the kids. Sabby loves the kids.
Yeah, yep. Trick love the kids. Let the sun shine in. Sorry. Yeah, we're doing a back to school barbecue where we're giving out back to school, school supplies for K through 12 in Roxbury, and also we're gonna have a barbecue there for them too.
Yep. So thank you so very much to all the patrons on Patreon. You guys make it so that we're able to do this work on the ground, and it's deeply appreciated. So we're gonna go into the chat. Let me check to see. I don't think we have any Rumble rants. If we do, then I will make sure to bring those up, but we don't have any right now. So we're clear on that. Now I'm going to go into, we're going to go into the Rockfin chat first so that we can get that. Because I want to make sure I don't want to forget that because I have in the past. So let's go into the Rockfin chat. Man, that was a great discussion. I'm still geeking out. So Anna Maris, thank you so much. Says beautiful people. Hempcard, thank you very much for the tip. He says U.S. Army teams will be deploying to as many as 35 African countries nearly next year for training programs and other operations as part of an increased Pentagon role in Africa. Interesting. Thank you very much. I will share this link into the chat for the people, Hempcard. Thank you so very much for that.
Hempcar is always coming with the receipts.
Man, Hempcar be just dropping gems. Between him, Dave Burt, and Roger Meadows, my plate is always full.
Yep.
All right, so let's go into the chat. So hello to the ACP, Robbie Burns. This is ACP. Good to see you. Christopher Begley says, Mr. Popping off with Carl. Oh, nice to see you, Christopher Begley, referencing Midwestern Marks. H. Lukil says, hello, all. Leroy says, good day, everyone. Much love. Judges chapter 6, verse 1. The Black Sabbath War Pigs has a plane. I don't know what the plane is for, but hopefully we're traveling somewhere. Bryce Smith says, fucking commercials. Yeah, I know. Yeah, so there we go. Sabby and Jaybe. DJ Leader says every day is a better day with a dose of Sabby and Jaybe. Home in the RBN fam. Ooh. Yo. Misha says a rare occasion would I get to manage a catch a broadcast. Wait. Oh, what's up, bro? Good to see you. my homie, my friend. All right. Grapentine says, what's up to Robbie and Bryce? All right. Roger, speak of an angel and he shall appear, says, please educate. Oh, yeah. I already talked about that. Okay. Thank you very much. We have Gregor McIntosh says, ER. Is that Eritrea? The Eritrean flag that you were trying to show? Awesome. GP says, here for the real deal. All right. Go start. On the Rumble side says hands off Africa. Absolutely. Our comrade Nick came in, said James and Sabby are too powerful.
Nick.
Sexy self. Zoya's in the chat saying great guest. You would know, Zoya. Thank you so much.
Yo, can we just give a really special shout out? Shout out to Zoya, because Zoya's been doing the damn thing.
Zoya.
Seriously.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Kevin Lee says, came here to say this. Big fan of RBN, but so many people from Eritrea are seeking asylum. That's a huge red flag. That makes me think of when people say, oh, so many people are fleeing Venezuela. That's a huge red flag. Venezuela has a ton of sanctions on them from the West, from the United States. So yeah, people are going to be fleeing. Is it a big red flag because of Venezuela, or would it be because of the United States and their sanctions that are constantly being put on? So
that's a good point.
I mean, a lot of times, we're constantly told, to have this, this view, this paternalistic view of these African countries, like they can't get themselves straight, when in reality it's that they can get themselves straight. The West just needs to get their grubby little nasty diseased hands off of them. Damn, that tea really hit me. Anyway, so Nate's Basement News says he's speaking facts. Absolutely. Thank you so very much. Misha says the siphoning of raw resources have always been our focus in the West. Yep. Leroy says what stops countries who suffer from the same sanctions from taking the countries committing the sanctions to the ICJ? Do they take them and it's just a waste of time? That's a good question. I wish I had seen that. I should have asked him that before. But yeah.
That is a good question. I wonder how much of a hassle it is to take a country to the ICJ. Like, I wonder if that costs, I don't know if it costs money or not. I wonder what that all involves.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot, man. Like, you know what? And I also wanted to ask about Eritrea. I should have asked this question too. I was thinking about the possibility of Eritrea joining BRICS. I should have asked him that too. I'll ask him that next time he comes on. But I actually am kind of curious about the possibility of Eritrea joining BRICS, because Eritrea definitely has natural resources that I think they would try to exploit. Because let me take a look at this really quick, because I want to see the natural resources in Eritrea. You see. So yeah, okay. Let me share my screen really quick, because I want to show this too before we wrap up. So this is from World Atlas. This is where the major natural resources of Eritrea. So it says minerals. Eritrea has a substantial amount of mineral deposits that are yet to be exploited. The geological works and remote sensing investigations have proved that the country possesses a substantial amount of minerals. Some of the mineral resources of Eritrea include gold, zinc, copper, oil, potash, limestone, gypsum, iron core, and natural gas. Eritrea's green belt, which hosts precious and base metals, covers about 70% of the country. The number of mineral reserves in the country are unknown due to a lack of adequate mining facilities. So, of course, Eritrea is going to be like, nah, you guys can't, Western mining facilities cannot come in and research and try to find out how much we have so that they can come in, and it'll put a fire underneath them to try to do, military interventions. It says, as of 2017, 10 mining companies have a license prospect for different minerals in the country, and estimated that once proper mining begins, Eritrea will produce 350,000 ounces of gold annually until it runs out of gold. My gosh. It says oil and gas. Eritrea is believed to be having massive reserves of oil and gas, but the government is not keen on exploiting them. It says the Eritrean Red Sea Basin, which covers an area approximately 125,000 square kilometers, has the potential for oil and gas. However, only 11 wells have been drilled offshore since 1921, with 8 of the wells having good oil or gas. So far, no commercial deposits have been discovered. In 2008, the government of Eritrea signed an agreement with Defba Oil Share Company to explore several areas of possible oil and gas. So it has fertile soil, wildlife, forest cover. Wow. Interesting, man.
Interesting.
This is why the West wants to get inside Eritrea.
Mm-hmm.
Yup. Man, it's going to be interesting. Speaking of which, I just wanted to also let you guys know before we head on out. Oh, wait, did I forget to put it up? I'll put it up right now. But I just want to let you guys know that this Sunday, like I said earlier, we will be doing the action on the ground here in Orlando. If you guys would like to, we're going to be meeting at Lake Eola at 11 a.m. at the amphitheater to do the action. So Orlando Mutual Aid, we're going to be doing Sunday, August 4th, 11 a.m. at the Lake Eola Amphitheater. If you guys are unable to make it, if you guys just want to contribute, you guys can contribute through Cash App at Orlando, $Orlando RBN, and that will help us out for our future actions because we're going to be raising money for grocery gift cards. So if you guys would like to come out, meet me, meet the rest of the chapter, and then also help your community, then you guys can come out and do the damn thing with us.
Yay!
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, by the way, do you have the link for your spot fund for your action too? I forgot to ask you about that.
I could actually just go ahead and share it too, and I'll put the link in there as well.
Cool. I'm sorry, I forgot.
No problem.
Yeah. But man, that's crazy. Surfing to the Max says, man, I'll be in Orlando on Saturday, not Sunday. Oh, that's okay. There's always a next time. Next time. Yeah.
Okay, I got it. I just had to pull it up real quick. Let me just share here. Okay, so it is August. I don't know why it's doing this. Yep. August 18th at 12 p.m. Is the back to school barbecue. And that is going to be at the Bruce C. Bowling Municipal Building, first floor lobby, 2300 Washington Street. That's in the Roxbury neighborhood of Boston. We're going to be giving away school supplies and also, donating school supplies. And also there's going to be a barbecue there for everyone as well. That's going to be at noon. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That's actually the same weekend as the DNC convention. And I know Nick and a bunch of people are going to Chicago to protest outside the DNC convention. So I won't be able to make it to Chicago because I'll be at this event. But I'll share the link in the chat for the back to school.
Awesome. Sab, I'm so excited for you.
I'm looking forward to it. We already have, we've already ordered some of the supplies, and we still have more to go. And this is all new to me because when I was in school, they weren't requiring us to have all of these types of supplies. Like now, like they actually list that the kids have to bring like headphones and like stuff like that. Like, I mean, these things aren't cheap. So, yeah. So I'm looking forward to that.
All right, great. So you got a big show coming up tonight. I am excited for this. Girl,
Yeah.
tell them what you got going on. Tell them what you got.
So tonight, actually, I'm covering 3 news stories, but we're also having the Black Voters Panel for 2024, and we're doing something. Look, this is going to be different because we've never participated in independent media during an election season. Not myself, not those of the rest of us at RBN. This is our first time, being a part of independent media during the presidential election. So it's just a totally different. Things are very different now. As you guys can tell, we've been having to do like breaking news, like, that kind of stuff, because we're just not used to this. It's our first time. So tonight, I have 3 news stories, but I also have the Black Voters Panel. So I have a list of, panelists that are coming on that support different candidates. So this is not like, it's not going to be people just coming on that support third party. There's going to be people that support Kamala, Trump, the couch. Yes, the couch is one. Not everybody wants to vote, and they'll be able to explain to you why they don't want to. RFK, Jill Stein, Cornel West. So we are having people on from different perspectives. And the purpose of this panel is to show people that Black voters are not a monolith. And we're going to talk about like why we support the candidates that we do. And then we're also going to talk about some of the policy issues such as policing, immigration, economics, of course, reparations, et cetera, where we stand on those issues and where we feel like, the person that we're supporting stands on those issues, et cetera. But this is your opportunity to hear from Black voters that are not put in front of you by corporate media. So we've seen this a lot, Jaybe, right? Where corporate media has these focus groups and it's just the people that are there that fit their narrative. So this is going to be different because obviously I don't agree with everybody that's coming on, but you need to hear different perspectives. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be a good one. Oh, man.
And shout out to Zoya for her help with that one, too.
Nice. Shout out to Zoya. You're also doing a call in tonight afterwards. So that's going to be really interesting.
Yes, we definitely are doing the call in tonight because I didn't do it on Tuesday, but I saved it for a good time, I think, anyway, because I figure people may want to call in after tonight's show. So.
Oh yeah, you ain't going to bed till like 3-4 o'clock this morning. Watch.
No, I will be in bed. I will be in bed. I do have training. I have gym training in the morning, so I will be in bed. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, great. Also, just let you guys know, up and coming on my channel, I'll also continue the reading of The Will to Change by Bell Hooks on my channel, as well as Of Water in the Spirit. I also read these books on my channel and explain. And then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, Margaret Kimberly's book, Prejudicial. Okay, so you guys will have that. And then no Jaybe. Well, technically, there will be a Jaybe show, but technically this weekend I'll be on the ground. So I'll be sharing what I'm doing on the ground, and I'll be streaming that as well so that you guys can see that on top of me doing the action as well. So that I want to inspire people to get out there and do the damn thing too and helping out their neighbors. So with that, Sabs, got anything else?
That's it.
All right, everybody. Take care. Have a great night. And look, water everything. And do all the things if you got them. And I wish all of you ice cold milk and warm, fresh baked cookies.
I wish all of you almond milk or oat milk and warm, fresh baked cookies.
And more fresh baked cookies. All right. See you later, Sabs.
Bye.
Bye. And a 1 and a 2 and a 3.